Yeah, very much in the early stages. PSG are exploring the conditions of a deal for Jadon Sancho. He had such a wonderful impact last season with Dortmund, rebuilt his reputation, if you like. We understand that he could be open to a move. Personal terms, we wouldn't expect those to be a problem either. Dialogue remains open between the two clubs. So I think this is one to watch as this transfer window progresses, because we are still very much in the early stages, but dialogue is open. We'll keep an eye on this.
Right, I'm going to throw a pebble in the water, spanner in the works here. They've got injury problems at centre forward. There's talk that he could do a job there. So they're not going to sell him now, are they, Mark?
I think they're open to everything. We know that Manchester United's transfer strategy this summer is very much one in, one out. Of course, a sale of Jadon Sancho's nature would be significant, not just for finance, but of course the experience he has at first team level, particularly getting to the Champions League final last season on loan at Borussia Dortmund. So if Manchester United were to let Sancho go, it would be because they had someone lined up ready to rock and roll. We know that this is a very different Manchester United at the moment, and we've seen that already. You know, Omar Barada's gone in there from City. We've seen Jason Wilcox go in there, Dan Ashworth going in there as sporting director. This is the first proper summer that Ineos and Sir Jim Radcliffe have had full control over the football operation at Old Trafford. And you've seen a very different type of Manchester United, the way they've negotiated deals, the way they've approached transfer targets. They've not paid above and beyond. They are prepared to sit and wait, and the profile of players that they've got has been much younger than perhaps they've done in the past. So you posed the question about, you know, what happens with Sancho if he leaves? Do they have players? They've got injuries. Can they afford to let these things go? There are people at the top of Manchester United that are far more equipped than those in the previous windows to make sure they don't leave this transfer summer weaker than when they started it.
He cost United £75 million. Are they expecting to get that sort of money for him now?
Well, dialogue is open. I think it will depend on the price. It will depend on what's right for Manchester United. It will depend on whether Jadon Sancho wants to go there as well. As I say, they're exploring the conditions of a deal, so we're in the middle of this process right now. And this is one of those that could rumble on throughout the transfer window. There's always at least one player that we talk about a lot, and it could be Jadon Sancho.
We've been talking about him a lot, haven't we? You know, there's been a lot of transfer windows. I think the most important thing for Manchester United, like you rightly say, they're not going to get back the 75-odd million pounds that they spent and invested on him. But think, what would they have got in January? It would have been 20, 30. Because of that successful loan spell, they're probably now looking at between 35 and 45, maybe nudging 50 million. But it needs to have the right party at the table that are prepared to pay the money that Manchester United...
The deal will have to be right for Manchester United. They're not going to give him away. So, as I say, one to watch.
Let's talk about Jadon Sancho then, potentially going to PSG. Can you see, Dan, why the French club are interested in him?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think we've seen PSG go away from a Galactico-type era, the likes of Neymar, Lionel Messi, of course Kylian Mbappe leaving this summer as well. And now you look at their front line, you know, Barcola, Dembele, Marco Asensio as well. They do have a new look, somewhat front three and wingers available. I think Jadon Sancho, where does he necessarily fit in that side? You know, does he start on the left ahead of those players? You know, those players all had a decent season in the French league as well. It does feel, I think, for Jadon Sancho, does he maybe perhaps need a more permanent solution? I think before we even talk about that, though, we have to say in pre-season, he has been very important for Erik ten Hag because he's been playing as a false nine due to the injury of Rasmus Højlund as well. So it feels like at the moment, because Erik ten Hag and Sancho have been able to put the past behind them and agreed to move forward, perhaps there is a future for him at Old Trafford as well.
Yeah, it's contrasting in terms of the messages being sent out. We're hearing that he's linked with PSG, but Erik ten Hag came out a week or so ago and talked about how the relationship was mended, and he's looking forward to working with Jadon Sancho for his upcoming season. So you don't know how much truth there is when managers come out and say those things. Are difficult positions to be put in, especially if the club are working behind the scenes. But like you said, Manchester United have suffered with injuries in this pre-season, suffered a lot of injuries last year. We know that they're pretty stacked in wide areas. Think about Anthony, and you think about Marcus Rashford, you think about Ahmad, Garnacho. You've got a lot of players in the wide areas. But Jadon Sancho is a player that showed last year for Borussia Dortmund when he was in form and and in rhythm, he could definitely deliver on the highest stage. Obviously, Dortmund played in the Champions League final on the losing side, but he played well in spells last year, despite the fact he was inconsistent in Bundesliga. So it's interesting to see how this plays out, but I think the pace of the French league will definitely suit the way that Jadon Sancho plays and gives him more time on the ball, maybe play a little bit more centrally as well. So this one will develop consistently, but I don't know if Jadon Sancho's future does lie away from Old Trafford, because like you outlined, there has been injuries to Manchester United's front line.
I mean, he's still only 24, Kwaku. How important is a fresh start, maybe for someone like him, to try and revive his career?
Remember the front end of last season where he fell out with Erik Ten Hag due to different reasons, and it really affected his development. But remember when he signed 3 years ago for Manchester United, how excited everybody was. That was a huge coup for Man United, and unfortunately just hasn't worked out for him. He's a player that, if you look at the statistics there, last season for Borussia Dortmund, 21 games, 3 goals, 2 assists. It's not, the numbers don't pop out and stand out to you, but it's the chance to create it and take-ons completed that really do stand out. It's very different to his time at Manchester United. If you think about his time at Man United, you don't really remember Jadon Sancho taking on players, but at Dortmund in a league that he knows very well, a place that he's very comfortable in, you saw glimpses of the old Jadon Sancho. So I'm excited to see what he can do when given a fresh slate, maybe at a new football club. But it might be a necessity that keeps him at Manchester United because, like you mentioned, they have had injuries.
Yeah, I don't think those stats reflect the impact he had at Dortmund as well. At the time he came in, they were going through kind of a rough period. They wasn't doing well in the league. People were questioning how far they were going to go in the Champions League. And then when he came in, even the videos that you saw, the players were so happy, especially Marco Reus, for example. I think that almost gave them a new energy. And we saw in the latter stages of the Champions League the performances that he had. But obviously some of those stats, you don't get like pre-assists or see those in stats. But I think that almost showed the type of player he was before he went to Manchester United. And when you look at what he's done in United, it's not been a reflection of what we saw, but at the same time, the ability is still there because he's proven it and he's still very young. I think he just needs the opportunity to be trusted to play week in, week out.
What do you think the best solution is then for this situation? Is it Jadon Sancho stays at Man United because they've resolved the issues with Erik Ten Hag and he maybe starts the season as a false nine? Or is it a case of he leaves and he starts again? What do you think is the best option for him?
I think it's hard because where you see Garnacho and Rashford playing, they're obviously left wingers, but they are so well suited to how Ten Hag plays. Sancho mainly played on the right under Ten Hag, and he can play there, but that's not his favoured position. And even at that, you're seeing Ahmad, he's having a great pre-season as well. Anthony's obviously there. So there's going to be a lot of competition. He's going to almost have to adjust the way he plays. You know, you spoke earlier about, you know, his game not being necessarily that suited to the Premier League. So I think it's going to be harder for him to break into that side compared to PSG, even though there are players there. I just think he suits European football a lot more.
Yeah. Well, will Jadon Sancho leave Manchester United or will he stay?